July 16, 1969. Cape Kennedy, Florida. 1 million people stand under the blazing sun, their faces turned toward the sky. They're watching the most powerful machine ever built by human hands. The Saturn V rocket. 36 stories tall. 6 million pounds. Destination: the moon. Inside the control room, engineers hold their breath, hearts pounding, palms sweating. And in the crowd, there's a man wearing a dark suit and thick-rimmed glasses. His name is Wernher von Braun. This is his rocket, his dream, his redemption. But if you told the American people who this man really was, they would be horrified. Because 25 years earlier, this same engineer was building weapons for Adolf Hitler. Weapons that rained terror on London. Weapons that killed thousands. And now, he's the mastermind behind America's greatest achievement. This is the story of how a Nazi scientist became an American hero. How a weapon of war became a gateway to the stars. And how one man's obsession changed the course of human history. Let's go back, way back, to a small town in Germany, 1912. A boy is born. His name is Werner Magnus Maximilian von Braun. He grows up in a wealthy family. His father is a baron, his mother an aristocrat. But young Werner doesn't care about titles or money. He cares about one thing: the sky. When he's 13 years old, his mother gives him a telescope. That night, he sees the moon for the first time through the lens, and something ignites inside him. A fire, a calling. He wants to go there. But there's a problem. Werner is terrible at math and physics. He's failing school. His teachers think he's a daydreamer, a lost cause. Until one day, he reads a book that changes everything. It's called The Rocket into Planetary Space by Hermann Oberth. In this book, Oberth describes how rockets could one day travel beyond Earth's atmosphere, how humans could reach the moon, maybe even Mars. Werner is mesmerized, and he realizes something crucial. If he wants to build rockets, he needs to master mathematics. Overnight, the failing student becomes obsessed. He stays up late, studying equations by candlelight. He devours books on physics, engineering, chemistry. Within 2 years, he's at the top of his class. By age 20, Wernher von Braun is enrolled at the Berlin Institute of Technology. He's brilliant, ambitious, charismatic. Everyone who meets him feels it. This kid is going to do something extraordinary. But there's a dark shadow growing over Germany. The year is 1932. The Weimar Republic is collapsing. Unemployment is skyrocketing. And a failed artist named Adolf Hitler is rising to power. Von Braun doesn't care about politics. He just wants to build rockets. But in 1933, everything changes. Hitler becomes chancellor, and suddenly, if you want to build anything in Germany, you need the Nazi Party's approval. Imagine this. You're 21 years old. You have a dream, a pure, beautiful dream, to explore space. But the only people willing to fund your research are the Nazis. What do? Von Braun made his choice. In 1934, he meets with the German army. They're interested in his rocket research, but not for space exploration, for weapons. They want missiles. long-range missiles that can strike enemies from hundreds of miles away. Von Braun knows this. He knows exactly what they want. But he convinces himself of something. I'll take their money. I'll build their weapons. But secretly, I'll be building the technology for space travel. It's a deal with the devil, and von Braun signs it. He's given a remote facility on the Baltic coast, a place called Peenemünde. Here, away from prying eyes, von Braun and his team of engineers begin their work. They test rocket engines. They study aerodynamics. They fail, over and over again. Explosions, crashes, setbacks. But slowly, methodically, they make progress. By 1938, they've built a prototype. By 1942, they've achieved something incredible. The world's first rocket to reach space. It's called the A4, but you know it by another name. The V2. The Vergeltungswaffe 2. Vengeance Weapon 2. And it's about to become Hitler's most terrifying creation. September 8, 1944, London. People are eating dinner. Children are playing in the streets. The war has been going on for 5 years, but London has survived the Blitz. They think the worst is over. And then, no warning. No air raid siren. Just a massive explosion that obliterates an entire city block. 16 people are killed instantly. Buildings collapse like cardboard. And then, silence. The survivors are confused, terrified. What was that? There was no sound of an aeroplane, no warning at all. It's as if the bomb materialized out of thin air. Within hours it happens again, then again, and again. Over the next 7 months, more than 3,000 V2 rockets will slam into London, Antwerp, and other Allied cities. They travel at 3,500 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. By the time you hear them coming, you're already dead. Allied engineers recover pieces of wreckage. They're stunned by what they find. This isn't just a bomb with fins. This is a liquid-fueled rocket with gyroscopic guidance systems. This is technology decades ahead of anything the Allies possess. Winston Churchill is briefed on the V2. He asks his scientists, "Can we stop these?" The answer is devastating. "No, sir, we cannot." British intelligence begins a frantic search. Who built this weapon? And they find a name. Wernher von Braun, 32 years old, technical director of the German Army rocket program, member of the SS. Now here's where the story gets even darker. The V2 rockets weren't just built by engineers in clean labs. They were built by slave laborers, concentration camp prisoners. Thousands of them worked to death in underground factories. More people died building the V2 than were killed by it. Did von Braun know about this? Yes. He visited the factories. He saw the conditions. And he did nothing to stop it. Years later, he would claim he was just a scientist, that he had no choice. But history remembers differently. April 1945. Germany is collapsing. The Soviets are closing in from the east, the Americans from the west. Hitler is hiding in a bunker in Berlin, and Wernher von Braun has a decision to make. He knows the war is lost. He knows what's coming. The Soviets will want him for their rocket program. The Americans will want him too. And the British? They'll want to hang him for war crimes. So von Braun gathers his top engineers, 500 of them, and makes a plan. They destroy documents. They hide blueprints. And then they flee. They travel south through the chaos of a dying Germany, carrying boxes of rocket designs with them. On May 2, 1945, von Braun's brother Magnus crosses into American-controlled territory. He approaches a private in the US Army, and in broken English he says, "My name is Magnus von Braun. My brother invented the V2 rocket. We want to surrender to the Americans." The private thinks it's a joke, but within hours, US intelligence is on the scene. They realize what they have. This isn't just a Nazi engineer. This is the most valuable scientist in the world. The Americans move fast. They bring von Braun and his team to a secure location. They interrogate them. They seize their documents. And they discover something incredible. Von Braun didn't just build the V2. He has plans for intercontinental missiles, plans for satellites, plans for manned spaceflight. Meanwhile, the Soviets are furious. They've captured the V2 factory at Peenemünde. But the scientists are gone. The blueprints are gone. The Americans got there first, and Stalin is not happy. Back in Washington, there's a heated debate. Military intelligence wants to bring von Braun to America, but the State Department is horrified. This man worked for Hitler. He was a member of the SS. We can't bring him here. The military argues back. If we don't take him, the Soviets will, and then we lose the rocket race before it even begins. President Truman is briefed. He's uncomfortable with the idea. But the Cold War is starting, and America needs an edge. So in September 1945, a secret program is launched. Codename Operation Paperclip. Over the next few years, the US government will bring 1,600 German scientists to America. They'll erase their Nazi pasts from official records. They'll give them new identities, new lives, and they'll put them to work for the US military. Von Braun and his team arrive at Fort Bliss, Texas. They're treated like prisoners at first. They're not allowed to leave the base. They're monitored constantly. But slowly, as they prove their value, the restrictions ease. Von Braun starts giving lectures to American engineers. He starts publishing articles. He appears on television, talking about space travel. And Americans are fascinated. This charming German scientist, with the thick accent and the infectious enthusiasm, he makes space feel possible. But not everyone is fooled. In 1947, a journalist discovers the truth about Operation Paperclip. The story breaks. US government hiring Nazi scientists. There's outrage, protests, congressional hearings. Von Braun is called before a committee. He's asked directly, "Were you a member of the Nazi Party?" He answers carefully, "I joined the party because it was required for my work, but I was never a true believer. I only cared about rockets." It's a convenient answer. Too convenient. But America needs him, so they accept it. And von Braun gets back to work. October 4th, 1957. Americans are watching TV, eating dinner, living normal lives. And then the news breaks. The Soviet Union has launched a satellite into space. Its name is Sputnik. A metal sphere, 23 inches in diameter. It weighs 184 pounds. And it's orbiting Earth right now, beeping as it passes overhead. America is in shock. The Soviets, they beat us to space. How is that possible? Panic sets in. Newspapers run terrifying headlines. Red moon over America. Soviets win space race. People look up at the night sky, and for the first time, they feel vulnerable. If the Soviets can put a satellite in orbit, they can put a nuclear warhead there too. In Washington, politicians are furious. President Eisenhower is under immense pressure. How did we let this happen? Where are our rockets? And everyone points to the same person. Wernher von Braun. He's been warning them for years. Give me the resources, and I'll put America in space. But bureaucracy and inter-service rivalry kept holding him back. The Army had von Braun. The Navy had their own rocket program. The Air Force had theirs. Everyone was competing instead of collaborating. But now, there's no time for politics. Von Braun is given a direct order. Get America into space, now. He has 90 days. Von Braun and his team work around the clock. They take an Army missile, the Jupiter C, and modify it. They add extra stages. They calculate trajectories. They test and retest. And on January 31st, 1958, America launches Explorer 1, the first American satellite. Von Braun is on the cover of Time magazine. He's a hero. The Nazi scientist has become an American icon. May 25, 1961. President John F. Kennedy addresses a joint session of Congress. The country is reeling from another Soviet victory. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space just weeks ago. America is losing the space race, and Kennedy knows he needs to do something bold, something that will capture the world's imagination. He steps up to the podium, and he says words that will echo through history. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. The moon, not a satellite, not a space station. The moon. It's audacious. It's ambitious. Many scientists think it's impossible. But Kennedy believes, and more importantly, Wernher von Braun believes. Von Braun is brought into NASA, the newly formed space agency. He's made the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and he's given the most important assignment of his life. Build the rocket that will take humans to the moon. Von Braun knows exactly what's needed. He's been designing this rocket in his mind for decades. It will be massive, more powerful than anything ever built. It will have 3 stages. It will burn millions of gallons of fuel. And it will generate thrust equivalent to 160 million horsepower. He calls it the Saturn V. But building it, that's another story. The challenges are immense. The rocket has to be reliable. One failure means dead astronauts. The engines have to fire in perfect synchronization. The guidance systems have to be flawless. And all of this has to be designed and built in less than 8 years. Von Braun assembles a team of 4,000 engineers. They work in shifts, around the clock. They test engines until they explode, then redesign them. They simulate every possible failure scenario. They push the boundaries of what's physically possible. And slowly, piece by piece, the Saturn V takes shape. July 16, 1969. We're back where we started, Cape Kennedy. 1 million people gathered. The Saturn V on the launch pad, von Braun in the crowd. Inside the rocket, 3 astronauts sit in the cramped Apollo 11 capsule. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins. They're sitting on top of a controlled explosion. 3,000 tons of rocket fuel beneath them. If anything goes wrong, they'll be vaporized instantly. T-minus 10 seconds. Von Braun closes his eyes. This is it. Everything he's worked for his entire life. All the failures, all the sacrifices, all the compromises. It all comes down to this moment. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. The Saturn V roars to life. Flames erupt from the base. The ground shakes for miles. Windows rattle in buildings 5 miles away. The noise is deafening, louder than 1,000 jet engines. And then, slowly, impossibly, the rocket begins to rise. 3,000 tons of metal and fuel lifting off the ground, defying gravity, rising toward the sky. In the control room, engineers are shouting data. Thrust nominal, trajectory good, all systems green. Von Braun watches through the window, tears streaming down his face. 2.5 minutes later, the first stage burns out and separates. The second stage ignites. 6 minutes in, the second stage separates. The third stage fires. 11 minutes after launch, Apollo 11 reaches orbit. They did it. Von Braun's rocket worked perfectly. And 4 days later, Neil Armstrong will step onto the surface of the moon. After Apollo 11, Wernher von Braun is everywhere. He's on magazine covers, he's giving speeches. He's celebrated as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. But there are questions he can never fully answer. Throughout the 1970s, journalists and historians begin digging deeper into his past. They interview survivors of the concentration camps. They uncover documents. And the picture that emerges is uncomfortable. Yes, von Braun built the rocket that took us to the moon. But he also built the rocket that killed thousands in London. Yes, he advanced human knowledge, but he did so with the help of slave labor. Yes, he claimed he was just a scientist, but he wore an SS uniform. He toured the death factories. In 1975, a documentary filmmaker confronts von Braun with these facts. Von Braun is older now, in his 60s. He looks tired. The filmmaker asks, "Do you feel guilt for what happened at the V2 factories?" Von Braun pauses for a long time. Then he says, "I had no choice. In Nazi Germany, you didn't refuse orders. I did what I had to do to survive and to pursue my dream." But is that enough? Is the pursuit of a dream enough to justify collaboration with evil? These are questions that haunt von Braun until his death. He dies in 1977 at age 65, pancreatic cancer. Some see him as a hero. Some see him as a war criminal who escaped justice. Most see him as both. A man who did terrible things and extraordinary things. A man shaped by history, who also shaped history. Today, more than 50 years after Apollo 11, we're still using technology derived from von Braun's work. Every rocket that launches from Earth uses principles he pioneered. Every satellite in orbit owes something to his designs. The International Space Station, the Mars rovers, the James Webb Space Telescope. All of them trace their lineage back to the Saturn V. But von Braun's legacy is complicated. He proved that humans could leave Earth, that we could reach other worlds, that the impossible could become possible. But he also proved something darker. that brilliant minds can serve evil causes, that ambition can blind us to morality, that the pursuit of knowledge, without ethical boundaries, can lead to unimaginable suffering. There's a photograph taken on the day of the Apollo 11 launch. It shows von Braun in the crowd, watching his rocket rise into the sky. On his face, you can see joy, pride, relief. But if you look closely, you can also see something else. Sadness, maybe. Or regret. Because he knows the truth. He knows that his journey to the moon began in the ruins of London. That his greatest achievement was built on the foundation of his greatest sin. And that history will never let him forget. So here's the question we have to ask ourselves. Can we separate the man from his work? Can we celebrate the moon landing without acknowledging the V2? Can we honor the scientist without condemning the Nazi? Maybe the answer is that we can't. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe the story of Wernher von Braun is a reminder that human beings are complicated, that we're capable of both incredible beauty and terrible cruelty, that the same hands that build weapons can also build bridges to the stars. Von Braun once said, "I have learned to use the word impossible with the greatest caution." He was right about that. The impossible became possible. We went to the moon. But the cost of that achievement, that's something we're still calculating. This has been the story of the German rocket scientist who took America to the moon. A story of genius and guilt, of ambition and atonement, of a man who reached for the stars, but could never escape his shadows.